So those are just ways that I think about it. So in your personal life, I would first create your non-negotiables, right? Like, what are the things that fill your cup? At the end of the day, the goal really is to be happy. If you're not enjoying the journey, then what is life for, right? So it's sitting there and figuring out what really makes me happy and what's important to me. It's creating, almost like you said, when you're saying a vision for your life, it's creating your vision statement. It's writing out your values and trying to figure out, how am I every day living my life towards those values? If you're in a situation where you feel like, you're lacking in that motivation, then I would question what you're doing, right? I would question and say, like, is this really the path that I want to be walking down? Or maybe there's something else that I should be doing, because things will be hard. And that's just something that you have to know, especially in entrepreneurship. In life, things are hard, right?
Welcome to the Dope Living Podcast, the show that breaks every rule about success. I'm your host, Janay, and we're here for anyone who refuses to choose between wealth and wellness, career and personal fulfillment. Whether you're building businesses, climbing the corporate ladder, or just designing a life that's more intentional, this is where dreamers become doers by creating success that feels as good as it looks. Ready to live dopely? Let's go. What's up, dreamers and doers, and welcome to the Dope Living Podcast, a conversation platform for ambitious people rewiring, reworking the rules of success in a modern world. I'm your host, Janay, and today we're talking about a mindset shift that doesn't nearly get enough attention. And it actually might change the way you build everything in your life, from your business and career to your wealth, creative goals, and peace of mind. We're talking about the exit mindset. Why you should build with the end in mind, even if you never plan to quit. Because here's the truth. The most of success now is basically broken, right? It was built for a world for our brains, our businesses, our relationships before it was rewired by technology. In a time when burnout is like a badge of honor, what does it look like to build something that actually feels good to live in? And no one understands this better than our guest, Alison Koplar Wyatt. Alison is the co-founder and CEO of the Female Founder Collective and The North, alongside an incredible career that includes senior leadership roles at Goop, Refinery29, The Knot, and Girl Boss. But what makes Alison fascinating isn't just her resume. It's how she thinks about legacy, agency, and what happens next. So whether you're an entrepreneur, creative, or just an intentional human, today's conversation is about designing a life and career that pays off in freedom, fulfillment, and options long before the exit arrives. Alison, welcome to Dope Living.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. And wow, you really summarized my belief system very succinctly.
Oh, I hope so. I'm
Thank
like, I
you.
hope I do everyone justice because, you have an amazing portfolio, and I just want to dive in and unpack some of some of those frameworks that you've built over the years, and kind of learn about what your experience, where your experience has brought you. First, we're going to talk about the exit. A lot of people are going to come into this thinking exit really only means selling a company or leaving a job, but you see it differently. How would you define the exit mindset for someone who's working, building, or growing, but doesn't necessarily have plans to go away anytime soon?
So the exit mindset is really creating your own version of success. And whenever you're thinking about what your next stage of life is, or your next job move, or your company, it's thinking about, what is the outcome I want at the end of the day? What's going to make me happy? Or if happy isn't your end goal, what's going to make me money? What's going to make me basically satisfied and feel like at the end of the day, there are no regrets about the path that I took. So I think it's just being very intentional from the onset of making a decision to invest yourself in a certain path that you want certain outcomes because as humans we do. And again, that outcome can be an intangible like happiness. And so perhaps your exit is just being able to continue to do the work that you're currently doing or do the job that you're currently doing. And if that's the case, then you need to make sure that you are bringing home enough income to support your life and your family to allow you to continue doing that work. Right? So it's just thinking about the outcome that you desire when you are starting something.
And you would think that there are founders, professionals who think about an exit potentially too late. How does the thinking how does thinking about it change how someone leads or hires or even spends their time day to day?
So exactly what you're talking about, sort of what you're doing day to day should all be under the construct of these filters that you are going to be able to create if you know what your outcome that you're desiring is. If you know what your exit plan is. So if you are hoping to sell your company for a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time, then it is thinking with that mindset and it's realizing you probably are going to have to go raise capital in order to accelerate the business in the way that you wish to. You are going to have to hire people around you that have certain skill sets that's going to enable the business to move quickly. You're going to have to think about the amount of time you're investing in your business. So if you do have a family at home, you're going to have to know that I'm not going to be able to spend as much time with my family maybe in these next few years because I'm going to be doubling down on my business in hopes to exit my business. On the other hand, if you are planning to run your business in perpetuity. Maybe you are a freelancer. Maybe you just love what you're doing and you have no intent to sell because you want to continue to be the CEO of your business or the creative director of your business. Then again, you want to make sure that you're making enough of an income to be able to support the lifestyle that you want while you're doing that work.
And the opposite of that would be potentially just kind of fighting fires from day to day or kind of taking things, I guess, one day at a time, so to speak.
I think if you're non-intentional and you don't create a plan, then you end up being driven by the day to day and whatever fire erupts in that moment, right? Like you can decide if you already know what your outcome is, if you already have your exit plan prepared, then you're able to sort of back into the right decisions. You're able to prioritize on a day to day basis so that you don't feel like you are being controlled by your schedule. You're being controlled by your inbox. You're being controlled by whatever everybody else wants from you
Mhm.
and you're actually able to consciously make the decision like, great, I got this email, but that is not my priority right now. My goal is this. And so it's every single day it's working towards that goal. And it goes the same for when you're hiring people, right? You want their goals in mind. So it's sort of a instead of thinking of it as just an exit mindset, it's almost a goal mindset. It's an
Mm.
intention mindset of setting up what are those things that I deliberately want to achieve or how do I want to feel? And then based off of that, your priorities fall in line. And it makes it a lot easier to make day to day decisions so that you aren't sitting there and controlled by external factors.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because at least a lot of spaces that I've been in and a lot of the work that I've done, it's been all about fighting fires. And it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel a lot of the times. It's been kind of this like you feel like a hamster on a wheel, right? And so it's powerful because at the end of the day it's almost like you sound like you're talking about setting a vision for your life, which isn't something you I mean you hear it in business, but how do you set a vision for your own life and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's the same thing. So I'm going to give an example again of myself because it's my own personal experience. But and I feel like I failed at life today, by the way. So it doesn't work cleanly every day. You're going to feel there are going to be times where you feel like you're not in control. You're really not in the driver's seat of your life, as I felt today because I was disorganized. When you get disorganized, that naturally happens. But it means in your own life, it's looking at it and saying, I create non negotiables. That for me is my way of controlling the uncontrollable. So, what are my non negotiables? I need to walk every day. And that might sound like a very audacious and hard thing to fit into the life of a business owner as well as somebody who has three kids. Um, I fit it in by creating a walk in work. So in the morning, after I drop my kids off at school, I take a lot of my meetings as calls because my team are in all different markets. And I found that that's the time and I go on a walk, I'm doing work, I'm getting sunshine, I am it's great for my mental energy, and that's how I get my steps in the morning, right? I also realize that I need to almost every night of the week, I wanna be there to put my kids down. And almost every day, I wanna be able to take my kids to school because I wanna be there I wanna be the first person they see in the morning, and I wanna be the last person that they see at night. And I want them to have that sort of moment of being able to share whatever's on their mind with me, and be there to sort of talk it out. So, um, that for me, like, those created my non-negotiables of, "Okay, I know that in the morning I need to take my kids to school. I know that in the evening, I'm gonna put them to bed. So what does the in between look like? And then I know I have my walk. Like that's already full in my schedule. I put it in my calendar and it does not get moved. And then the other priority is around my business, right? So I love running my business. I love what we're doing. I want to continue doing the work that we're doing. We, in particular, are not VC backed. We decided we didn't want to be VC backed at the very beginning. Again, exit mindset there because we didn't want somebody else to be in control of the direction of our business. We didn't want to have to answer to anybody before we knew what the business could do and what the business model was, right? I actually encourage that of most founders. But having that sort of very intentional conversation with my co-founder, Rebecca, in the beginning really helped to shape how we run and operate the business and what our day-to-day looks like, right? It would look very different if I had investors to answer to. Um, so those are just ways that I think about it. So in your personal life, I would first create your non-negotiables, right? Like what are the things that fill your cup? At the end of the day, the goal really is to be happy. If you're not enjoying the journey, then what is life for, right? So it's sitting there
Mhm.
and figuring out what really makes me happy and what's important to me. It's creating almost like you said, when you're saying a vision for your life, it's creating your vision statement. It's writing out your values and trying to figure out how am I every day living my life towards those values. I found a year ago that I wasn't infusing enough joy into my life, right? Like I was checking the boxes and I was like, okay, I'm doing the walk every day. I'm putting my kids to bed and I'm waking up with them in the morning and I'm taking them to school, but I'm actually missing the joy component. Right. So what brings me joy? What lights me up more than anything? I love to go out and dance with my girlfriends. So I started making sure that at least once a quarter, I have either a trip or an outing with girlfriends where I can go
Mhm.
dance unabashedly and just enjoy myself. So it's making sure that you are just super intentional about writing down the things that are important to you, coming up with those non-negotiables, coming up with a vision for your life, and then also what are the values that I want to um, use that really make up who I intentionally want to be.
And it's interesting because that's where the kind of the dystope living platform came from because there's a lot of elements that you've put in there, right? Like there's kind of this wellness element, there's family, there is work, there is business, which is a part of work. And so there's so many factors going on, and there's this element of distraction as well. There's a ton of distraction around us. And then personally for me, I find that in a lot of spaces I'm overlooked. um my potential is overlooked, or my work ethic, or and I don't know if I can say it's because I'm a woman, or if it's just because of me. Like it's a hard thing to reconcile. So there's also this like mental and image distraction going on, and a lot of people call it imposter syndrome. So how do understanding all of those elements that we fight with on a daily, um how do you kind of reconcile all of that?
Like, keep from getting distracted or sort of fight imposter syndrome? What's sort of
A-
the
and stay motivated through all of it as well.
Well, I think that it's going back to the mission statement of your life and the vision statement of your life and of your business. If you are doing things every day and maybe you've created your non-negotiables, maybe you've created your vision statement, but at the end of the day you're not happy or you don't enjoy the process, then my argument would be you got to change it, right? Like you got to break things and like just totally tear shit up and redo it. Because if you're feeling that way and there is a lack of motivation, then it most likely is because you are doing things that are not aligned with what you really want to do and the outcome that you really want, right? Because I find if you are aligned, you just want to keep going. And there are days that are much harder than others, right? But at the end of the day, if you're in a business and you know your vision and you enjoy the work and you've created the structure very intentionally for yourself to be in control of what those non negotiables are and design what your day should look like, then it's hard. Like right now, we're going through something with our business where we had somebody leave and it made it very hard. It's so much
Mhm.
harder than it's been on a day-to-day basis because that person was really integral to our company. And we're in this situation where just have to tell myself like this is just for now, right?
Mhm.
Like but if you're in a situation where you feel like, you're lacking in that motivation, then I would question what you're doing, right? I would question and say, like, is this really the path that I wanna be walking down? Or maybe there's something else that I should be doing because I things will be hard, and that's just something that you have to know, especially in entrepreneurship. In life, things are hard, right? Um But as a mom, it's like things are so hard. There's never a moment where I'm like, I don't want to be a mom. And there's times when I want to like walk out of my house and like take a moment and, or maybe an
Yeah.
hour, where like I cannot be
Like,
around
give me
my kids.
time. Give me a
But
moment.
there's never that like, oh, like I wish this was not my life, you know?
Right, right.
So
And what
I
I've
think that there is a difference there.
and what I've found, over the last couple of like the past year, let's say, is uh when you have that daily schedule, like, and you have that vision, but you also have that daily schedule, and it looks like it's just a little bit like it's just you're doing one thing in a day. And then when you look back, those one things just kept adding up, and then they turned into something bigger. And so, you know, um I'm such an advocate of like just little stuff on your daily calendar, just like one or two things. If you can
Yeah.
knock those out, it might not look like you're moving the needle, but over time you are you'll like be so
Consistent.
far that and you wouldn't even have realized until you look back and said, "Wow, like that actually helped me." But it's really hard to see. the progress once you're like on your day-to-day calendar, like, okay, I'll spend an hour doing this. I'm not sure where that's going to take me, but I'll just do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Something a woman named Cassandra, who is the founder of Kitsch, does, which I thought was so smart to help you with that piece, right? When you're just doing little things, the consistency is what adds up and what ultimately matters, what's going to make the big impact in every part of your life, right? But sometimes it's hard, especially somebody who's a founder. You see the big vision and you just want to be there. But what she did is she started writing the headlines that she wanted to read one day. And when she needed motivation, she would look back at those headlines and be like, "Am I moving towards those headlines?" I think that's a
Mm,
really interesting exercise for people to do, to sort of think about, okay, or creating a literal, like, Pinterest board or a physical vision board. I actually
mm.
do that with my kids.
Oh,
I create
yeah.
physical vision boards, and on those vision boards, I have them write 3 goals that they have for the year, and then I have them write 5 things that they absolutely love about themselves, and then 3 things that they would like to say about themselves that maybe not is not true in this moment, right?
Mm.
So I think if you have almost like a physical reminder that you can look back at and check in on, it really helps to keep driving you forward each day, in alignment with where you wanna ultimately go. But I do wanna go back to the imposter syndrome
Yes.
piece of it, and I actually wanna ask you, what makes you feel like what are some of the emotions or things that come up, and in what scenarios do you
Yeah,
get?
so, sometimes it's more of like like I said, like a lot of things that I've gone through in the past year feels like I've been looked over in spaces where I could be qualified. I'm qualified enough, right? Or it might be spaces that I'm in where um I'm just not viewed in again, this might be more inward reflection than the reality. And I think we all have that kind of warped um opinion of ourselves. But it's I can't tell if it affects the way we present ourselves, and in this case myself, how I present myself. And even doing something like this podcast is me, because there's I also have a role to play in it, right? I have to make sure that I am in a position where I am doing things that I love, like you say, and that I know that I can be good at, but I'm probably quite rusty in this moment because I have not put myself out there. It put me in a position where I was shying away for so long, blaming like the post COVID effect for way too long, and realizing there's so many interesting conversations still to be had around these feelings that I have, that I know that I'm not alone uh regarding, you know?
Definitely. I mean, what I would say is about it's about reps, right? Um, we talk to our kids about this with sports, and I've found this to be so true in life and in business, where I have to, for example, present and ask for money all the time. In my previous job, I was in sales, and I would go into advertisers and I would ask them for these big sums of money to do these big partnerships. 2 things had to happen that I had to tell myself. First, I had to sort of practice those pitches, um, as well as prepare in a way that I would have to come up with some of the ideas myself, right? We had a whole team that we could hand it off to, but I wanted to be in that process because I wanted to
Mm,
fundamentally believe in what I was talking about. I think the same goes for any situation that you're putting yourself out there. If you're passionate about it and if you really truly believe it, it's going to be a lot easier sort of story to tell and story to sell, if you will. The other thing that I would say is that you have to believe that what you are sharing with the world is of value, right?
Mhm.
Make it not about yourself. Make it about the work that you're doing, the message that you're sharing. Because if you sort of forget about yourself and just think about yourself as, I'm just a vehicle for this message, it takes the ego out of it. And it also makes you a lot more compelling when you are having that conversation. It feels a lot more authentic because you genuinely believe in yourself. And when I'm talking to founders about raising money, a lot of times they're like, I feel bad asking for money. It feels weird. I feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, you're not asking for money. You are offering an opportunity for somebody to get on this journey with you and ultimately have the chance to make a lot of money on the back of it. Because if you fundamentally believe in what you're building and what you're doing, then that means you believe that you're going to be able to make a lot of money doing it too. Right. So it's inviting people in on the journey. Um, so I think if you sort of take it off of yourself, because like there's also things you can do, like you can give yourself pep talks, you can do the stances. And I think that those things can work. And that there's certainly scientific evidence that suggests that they do. I sometimes like will when I'm in a bad mood, try to get myself in a better mood by just positive repetition of comments like I'll talk to myself in the mirror or I'll talk to myself when I wake up, right? I think that those are again, they're scientifically great things to do, but it doesn't acknowledge the fact of that subconscious feeling that is so much stronger, right? Your subconscious is what, 80 or 90% of your entire brain. And so it's really hard to override that if it's a strong feeling. So I would sort of flip how you're thinking about it, reframe it, and really have it be about, again, the message that you're delivering and more the importance of I'm doing this for this message. I'm doing this for the mission behind whatever it is that I'm doing in that moment, not about like, what does my hair look like? Or like, I don't look like the other people delivering this message. Like, who cares? Because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is if you fundamentally believe in that message and you fundamentally believe that what you're doing has value and you're offering value to somebody else to help in whatever way, shape, or form it is, then that's going to be all people hear. They're not going to see your face. They're not going to be thinking about like, you know, whether your eyebrows look good or not. They're going to be thinking about the fact that they want to go run and do whatever you just suggested that they do, right?
I love that. And one thing that I want to highlight is you have built an entire ecosystem helping women to build smarter, not harder. Why do you think a lot of the people you work with, the women you work with, or do you think that they are caught in kind of the way I describe this, and this has come up in a lot of the episodes that we've had so far, but we are caught up in the algorithm and not like, and then these kind of superficial ideas of how do we grow and gain influence in our business today, in our life today. So I'm curious to see how you manage that, within your even your ecosystem as you work with women founders.
How they don't get caught up in the algorithm and instead like be
Uh,
more intentional about what they're building.
right. And the trends and the like, because
Yeah.
that's what's kind of determining which directions we should go into, and we might be missing kind of our inner deep reflections of what's actually where we're actually creating value.
Well, I think it's really easy to get caught in the algorithm, and, like, I've noticed myself getting caught in an algorithm totally unrelated to work, but, like, more in the health algorithm where it just started to make me crazy, and my husband's like, you need to pull back because like, you're starting to be a little bit unhinged." So I think having somebody else, too, in your life, surrounding yourself with people in your life that will help guide you back to reality and back to who you really are is important too. But I would say that it is hard in today's world doing business to ignore the algorithm because, like, you're in there doing business. Like, my husband's like, "You need to stop going on Instagram." And I'm like, "I'm on Instagram looking for work stuff." And then, like, I have a fear of flying and I see a plane crash video and then and then I'm down a rabbit hole, just those crazy things. But I think it's like it's creating certain times of day maybe that you are doing that. I also am not the social person, and so I don't get dragged into that, but more just like getting caught up in trends. What I would say is like, again, going back to creating that exit plan. We actually just announced the launch of something I'm super excited about. It actually isn't out yet, but it will be by the time this airs. It's called Founder Operating Manual. And that is to help give you a guide for all of your decision making in your business to keep you from getting whiplash at looking at all of these shiny objects that you're going to see along the way and maybe want to execute on. And it's basically it's a decision making framework, right? And that decision making framework comes from what are the key you can pick only 3. Like what are the 3 priorities in my business? What are the 3 priorities in my life? Right? And if you find yourself spending a lot of time on things that are not a priority in your life, not a priority in your business, you got to have the discipline to chuck those to the side.
Mm,
You're getting off course. Um and it's the same thing. So it's like looking at those 3 priorities every single day in your business and be like, when you're making a decision on whether or not to spend time, energy, or resources on something, you first look at it and say, does it hit on one or all of these priorities? And if it does, how much? And then how much
mm,
compared to the next thing on the list? If it
right.
doesn't hit on all 3, like cross it off, send it out, off you go. And it just
It
makes it
reminds
so
me
much easier to
of
make decisions.
It reminds me of one of the, I guess, frameworks that I love day to day, and I don't use it enough, I have to admit, is the Eisenhower matrix in terms of where to bucket a lot of my tasks. And I'm not really good at it because I have a hard time figuring out where this task actually belongs. So it's probably not the best matrix for me, but I love the thinking about it, right? Because it helps, because if I'm able to categorize my task by those top 3 priorities, then I can understand where I need to delegate, for the most part, and what I need to take on, and that list gets shorter as I focus or tie it into, my priorities. And then, which ones are urgent and which ones are not urgent, right? And
Yeah.
so now, I get all the urgent ones that I need to do out the way, which should not be as big as the others, hopefully. And then the ones that are non-urgent, that are really strategic, but really hone in on the strategic priorities of the business or my life, should
Yep.
be really, where I sit down and really start doing the vision planning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's amazing. It might take a lot of energy and time and mental aptitude to think about all of those things to create your vision board. But once you do it, it makes everything else go so much faster and so much more cleanly. So it's so worth taking that time out. And we're trying to do it now with more mature founders who are, maybe 40 or 50 million in your business. And it's like at that point, it's just all you have all day are fire drills. Because it starts to be the tail that wags the dog, like, where your business keeps growing and, like, it gets bigger than you, and you have to really intentionally take yourself out and be like, "Okay, who do I need to hire to, like, take on this task over here?" Or, "What do I need to cut out from my day to day so that I'm no longer just reacting to everything," right? When I get to that place, I get it's so stressful, I feel unhealthy, I feel like I can't sleep because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, wait, I have this and this and this to get done." when that starts to happen, I'm like, you have to sort of stop and slow down in order to then speed up again, because
Mm.
no way that you can take on more. You just have to remember that. You have to kind of go back to that vision board, those priorities, and be like, how does this ladder up to everything else that I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, I love that term in terms of, when you gotta slow down, to speed up again, right? Because at that point, I think that's when you start to make those careless decisions, those decisions that might not be good for your well-being, your business, your life. And so, it's in your best interest to slow down a bit and figure out at what point to put the pedal back to the metal, you know?
Yeah,
Um, so
absolutely.
we've been talking about the end in mind isn't about quitting. Um, and then, you know, we can, I guess we can argue or say that the end in mind really could be your legacy, right? And what legacy do you want to build for yourself as well? Um, and, something I found fascinating about your story is that you've been with global brands like Goop and Refinery29, but also help startups through the female founder collective. How has your own idea of success evolved through those phases in your life so far?
So, to be honest, I was in a place where I was the breadwinner in my marriage. And I was making a lot of money. I had a sort of a hired gun, if you will. Um, but it was really nice taking home a paycheck, and it felt really good for my identity and for my confidence. And then when I started my own company with Rebecca, you had to build back up again, and that was really it's so hard. Coming from making a lot of money somewhere, it's very difficult to go start a business because it feels so antithetical to anything and so illogical and just makes 0 sense. Because you're like, "I'm able to pay for things now. I'm gonna, like, go start all over again after I've, like, worked so hard to build this career."
Mhm.
But what I will say is I created a new definition of success for myself, and I'm slowly starting to make money finally. Finally able to take some salary from the business now that we've built. But the definition of success is like I want to keep going as long as it's growing and as long as I'm enjoying it. And honestly, a lot of people don't have this ability to do so, but I had made enough of a nest egg myself and my career from before to afford to be able to have a few years of not making much of an income. And also, my husband had done the same. So I was in a good place financially where I was able to do that. A lot of people can't do that, and that's, not fair. Right. But for me, I gave myself I'm like, if this isn't working after a certain amount of time, I I can't I can't continue like this in terms of success because I'm not gonna be able to pay people to help watch my kids while I'm working. I'm not going to be contributing to the family in the same way, and also situations change, like we had I'm gonna be totally honest, we had the fire come along and our house burned down, and we lost a ton of money and a ton of things in that. We didn't have ample insurance. And now I'm like, a fact of life is I need to start making more money again, right? And so what does that look like? My definition of success before was not necessarily that. So things are going to change and life events are going to happen. Unfortunate things are going to happen. And so you take a step back again and you reframe, right? Like, I think your definition of success, probably in the beginning of your business, is going to look very different. Your definition of success when you're in your 20s and you're not quite sure what you want your life to look like, but you maybe know what you want your next 3 years to be able to look like. Maybe you want to be able to travel a lot. Maybe you want to, um,
Mhm.
be able to afford an apartment on your own. Whatever it is, it's gonna always be changing. So I would say, like, you have to check in with yourself at least once a year, but then also as life events happen, take a step back and be like, okay, this was not, this was not part of my plan, my exit plan, but that's okay. You just have to sort of create a new one based off of the inputs that you have.
That's so real. I mean, I love the fact that that was so real because I think we want to like this pie in the sky and we want to dream, but the
The
fact of the
reality.
matter is the reality is, and I'm always torn in that, right? Because I've been starting businesses since 2012 and I want to say that I want to just go all in, but the reality is, can you plan for that? Can you effectively plan for that? And effectively planning for that is saying, hey, I've got to sacrifice some things. I've got to pull
Yeah.
back on some things. And other things I have, like you said in the beginning, there's non negotiables where like I need that. Right. But
Mhm.
having that there's something on the other end that's going to be, taking. So, you've got to kind of play that give and take game. Um, and so success can really change dramatically and a part of what I've been preaching with dope living is that success looks different for everybody, but you don't have to live up to someone else's idea of success for yourself, right? And you know you've got to figure out, like you said in the beginning, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what do you want to do? What truly makes you happy and fulfilled in the moment? And can you still do pieces of those even in the big shift, even in the career shift, in the, you want to kind of step out? And that's outside of the nest egg that you've got to build up and, try to manage as you build. But I think that's so real and so important. I have a hard time with it because I want a fairy tale story, but I don't think that's gonna happen. um so many ambitious people build as if they'll have energy forever, mentally, physically, emotionally, but building with the end in mind forces you to think, what kind of person do I want to be at the finish line? Was there a moment in your own life, maybe during your time at Refinery29 or even rebuilding after the fires, when you realized what it means to build not just for growth, but for grace and for your future self?
Oh, it's such a hard one. It's such a great question because when I look back at my time at Refinery, it did sort of start to become the tail wagging the dog in the sense that I like totally had lost control of my own schedule, of anything else but just focusing on growing the business. I wasn't even the founder, right? Like I'm in there giving it my all, and then not even thinking about the fact that it wasn't mine. And I worked at Refinery. Funny, kind of a funny story. My husband moved to Los Angeles and I was like, "Oh, I'll be right behind you." But in reality, I didn't want to leave my job at Refinery, which was in New York. And it took me getting pregnant, but not just getting pregnant. I was almost 7 months pregnant before I left Refinery.
What?
I had a baby in my belly. And I had to go to the West Coast, and they offered me a nice role to run the West Coast office, but at the time, I was like, "That's, like, 3 people. I don't wanna do that. That's not interesting to me." So, I had to look for a new job. So, again, like, life moments do come in. This is a very imperfect science, but that's why it's really important to sort of check in, um, with yourself again and again to redefine what that does look like. Um and I'm forgetting the root of your question.
Ultimately, how are you planning for your future self? Like,
Got
what,
it. Yes. So, with having a baby, that was this huge sort of disillusionment for me because I was like, men and women are equal. Like I had always made a great salary. I was always equally paid, if not paid higher than my male counterparts because I went in and I asked for it and I went in and I worked harder and I performed. So I was like, I don't understand this whole thing. Like, it's gender parity until I had a baby. And I was slapped in the face with the fact that you, it's like you're disabled. And here you are, you have to, to like perform at the same rate. And, my husband went right back to work after I had the baby on like that next Monday. And she was born on, no, I think he went to work on Friday and she was born on a Tuesday. And I remember sitting there and I'd had a particularly challenging birth where I had to have an additional surgery. And so I'm like, I could barely sit down. I was in so much pain. I couldn't go to the bathroom. TMI, but it was a shit show. And I was like, wait, I'm gonna go back to work. At the time I had the job. I was on maternity leave. I had the job as CRO at Goop. And I was like, I couldn't imagine a world where I had this tiny human that I now have to take care of. I'm like breastfeeding this tiny human. I'm having trouble breastfeeding this tiny human. So I'm pumping. I'm up in the middle of the night. My husband tried to get up in the middle of the night too, but it was pointless. I'm like, I have to go feed her. So, like, why are you going to get up too? So I'm exhausted, getting less sleep than I have ever gotten. I'm in so much pain because of the additional surgery and the thing that happened when I was giving birth that I just couldn't imagine a world where I could ever even work again, much less, like, bring in the amount of income that I brought in. And the reality is, sadly, I still had never gotten back to where I was pre-kids. But I had to change my definition of success to, again, going back to those non-negotiables. I'm like, the new me doesn't wanna be the last person in the office. In fact, the new me doesn't wanna go into an office. Like, the new me, and this is me as of 10 years ago, so it feels funny saying new me because it's now been me for a long time. The new me does not wanna travel more than 48 hours at a time because I wanna be back with my kids. I don't wanna miss much. The new me will not go to a work event over going to my kids' play. Um, the new me will not burn the midnight oil, like stay up till 1 AM because I know I need to be fresh for my kids. So what does that look like in terms of my earn potential? It means I'm gonna make a little bit less, right? I think the unfair thing is that, and the reality is that only works if your partner is able to cover that shortfall of income. But something that we did sit down and very proactively do is figure out, okay, how much does each of, like, what does our combined earning need to look like? And
Mm.
how do we make sure that we can send our kids to the place we want to go? It's like when once kids are in the mix, um, it is a more complex budget, but it does go back to, and I've always done this, I budgeted for the life that I wanted and created goals for where the direction of the person that I wanted to be too, right? Like, I'm like, I knew in Manhattan, for example, I bought my first apartment in Murray Hill. I'm like, I didn't love Murray Hill. I didn't want to be in Murray Hill. But I was like, I can't afford to live in another part of town because it's more expensive to be downtown. But I remember being like, I want to be in the West Village by the time I'm 30. I end up changing the West Village, swapped out for Tribeca. And I ended up getting that apartment and being able to afford that apartment. Why? Because every single day I lived my life with the intention of getting that Tribeca apartment, buying it myself. I got no help from my family, no help from anybody else. It was all me. And it was looking at my money market account. It was investing. It was spending those extra hours, right?
Yep.
It was all of these things that, if you, again, live with that intention and you set those goals and you're thinking about them every day when you wake up, you're gonna hit them. It's kind of like when you go to sleep and you're like, "Oh, I know I need to be up by this time tomorrow morning."
And you're
Your
just like,
body
you're
just
on
does it.
it.
Your body
Yeah.
wakes up at almost the exact time. It's
Mhm.
incredible what you can tell your brain and your body to do if you do it with repetition and you think about it enough, thoughts become things and patterns, and you end up manifesting it. So it's putting that out into the world of what do you want? And again, you're going to have to sort of reset when things come your way. Not necessarily give up on the dream, but maybe adjust your time frame, adjust how you're going to get there, because you know a fire was in your path and your house got burned out. I had planned to live in the Pacific Palisades because I love the Pacific Palisades, and now I cannot live in the Pacific Palisades, so I need to find my new version of, like, what does that look like? And frankly, we can't afford to live in the places we wanna live right now. So, we're in the midst right now of readjusting. Okay, what does this look like? What is the new sort of structure for happiness and what we thought our perfect family life would look like? Um, and that's okay, it's actually it's a great part of the journey and a great part of the story. I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily would have been happy if everything had been like great and wonderful and Skittles and rainbows in the Pacific Palisades for a time. Like, who knows? I might have gotten bored and itchy and wanted to do something else. But it's like, I feel like I've learned so much, and I've also gained an incredible community. And I've realized that community is so important to me, right? So now when we think about where we want to live and what we want to do, community is such an important piece of that always.
Mm. Well, you've definitely inspired me. That a lot of what you've said, I think, resonates with a lot of us, right? Because at the end of the day, we're going through these things and our outlook can be so warped sometimes and thinking it's the negative, but ultimately this is how character is built. This is
Yeah.
how this experience helps to define generations, right? So we could now teach others how to build up that resilience and kind of, let them know that things aren't always, rainbows and Skittles. We've got to go through stuff, but you have to adjust as necessary. And at the end of the day, I think that the starting point is really what's going to make you happy. Like, what does your happiness balance looks like? And then what do you need for that baseline? And then work from there. So I think that's super a great point to end with today. And Allison, one thing I try to do with every episode is end with a an affirmation, because what you put out in the universe is what you get back. So try to at least end the episode with something positive so that you can go to your appointment. So it's quickly this affirmation is about the exit mindset. And so taking a deep breath, today our affirmation is that I am building something that will outlast my effort and reflect my truth. Every choice I make today creates freedom for my future. I don't fear endings, they're just transitions to the next version of my potential. Thank you so much, Allison,
Thank
for coming on the Dope Living podcast. I am so happy, and I have a lot to reflect on, and I know everyone else who's watching this sure does as well. Um, and that is the Dope Living podcast, everyone. See you next time. That's another episode of Dope Living in the books. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, screenshot it, tell someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow @Dope Living for daily inspiration. Whether you're building businesses, advancing your career, or simply designing a life that's more intentional, keep dreaming, keep doing, and keep creating success that makes people go, damn, that's dope. Until next time, dreamers and doers.